The more I dig into trying to stay present, the more I realize there's a lot more going on with boredom. The interesting thing about boredom is that it's not just an ADHD thing or just about stimulation. It can have just as much to do with just trauma.
There's something in my body that doesn't feel comfortable with where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing, etc. Therefore, I'm bored. There isn't anything wrong with being selfish, but I don't ever see a good time to be self-centered.
Welcome to the Derelict Podcast for the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way. We're talking about the scary part of the journey where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Today we dive into the difficulty of staying present. Tyler, how's it going?
I feel so present, Josh.
Good. I thought I would say that first to see if you were busy looking at your phone when I said it.
No, I actually feel very present today. Been trying out some new mindfulness techniques to get me to that spot, and it's almost like they're working.
Oh, nice. Good. Anything you want to share?
That's a whole nother podcast.
A whole nother podcast. All right. Well, we'll stay present with the focus of staying present. I like it. Well, here's what I would ask the audience. As we dive into this difficult topic of staying present, have you ever had a million things going on and it's been so hard to stay present to your kids, maybe your work, maybe your spouse, your friends? Well, I sure have. So welcome. Today, we're going to talk about a dad's guide to staying present. So maybe to kick it off, Tyler, why this topic? Why do you think it's harder than ever to stay present in today's crazy world? Let's maybe talk about the internal forces that we face. Obviously, there's a lot of external forces, a lot of noise in our society, but what about internally? Do you have any thoughts on why it's harder for us to stay focused in today's world, especially internally?
Well, I think it comes down to come down. Like it come down.
As it comes down, come down.
Don't come down to
Come downs.
Yeah.
This is when we need an editor because there should be some sort of bluegrass playing right now.
Right.
And it's even funnier that I just said that because the editor's probably already put in the bluegrass music. So now it's still continuing to play, which is great.
So meta. It comes down to a lot of competing objectives, I think. That's always what it is for me, whether it's business or family or lifestyle objectives, right? And so when I have competing multiple objectives, it's really hard for me to focus on one thing because I want to keep all the balls in the air. So you get stuck in this juggling act where you're just trying to do your best to meet your expectations, your goals, to meet your kids and your family's expectations, anything else that's going on. And you end up just going every which way. So I think the idea is if you can just focus on one objective at a time and give yourself permission to be present there, then that opens the conversation up at least, or the possibility of success. If I don't start there, I'm pretty much doomed to failure.
That actually reminds me of a book that I read called Atomic Habits. Have you read that book?
I love that book.
By James Clear. And one of the quotes that I wrote down that I thought we might discuss today is, quote, "Work hard on things that come easy." And that one really resonated with me based on what you're talking about right now, because I can get so focused on things that are not necessarily easy. And I live for a challenge. So sometimes I'm doing things just because they're challenging. And then I do more things just because they're challenging. And I'm leaving behind all the ways that I should be present. And I'm just doing these things because of the fact that they're on my list and because of the fact that I feel some sort of accomplishment doing them. Or maybe I just want to shame myself and feel like shit for not doing them. I'm not sure. Depends on the mood. But I definitely resonate with that. And when I read that quote from James Clear, I really started thinking in my own life, well, how do I work harder on things that come easy to me? I think it's a brilliant idea because I will work easy on things that come hard all the time. But I don't know. How do we focus on those things that come easy so that we can stay more present? Well, maybe this is my question. if we are focusing on the things that are coming easier to us, do you think it's easier for us to stay present internally? Do you think it matters?
I think the important part is what is going on underneath. So if you're bored and that's why you're doing things that are more challenging, then doing things that are easier are not going to help you stay present. But if that's not the underlying reason that you're doing challenging things, for me, breaking things down into the sum of its part to small, accomplishable tasks or concepts, then it's much easier for me to stay focused. So starting with easy tasks that build up to bigger things is always easier. And it's always easier to consolidate your energy and your focus into one consistent direction.
Yeah, that's true. Then there's that whole other thought too, though, at the beginning of the day, do the thing that's the hardest, right? And get out of the way and then move on.
My dad always said, eat the frog in the morning. There's my
hell does that mean?
Eat the frog in the morning. The first thing you do, eat the thing that you don't want to eat first. And then everything else in the day gets easier.
But what if you love frog legs? I'm not getting this analogy.
There may be an underlying assumption that you don't love frog legs.
Got it.
The same concept goes with, I have a bunch of friends that are doing cold plunges now. And they say that if that's the first thing they do in the morning, then everything else in their day seems easier because they set themselves up for an achievable battle will that they were able to accomplish. And then that just set their day off in a trajectory of, I already did something I really didn't want to do.
Yeah, I definitely have people that do cold showers as well for the same effect or similar effect.
What effect is that?
To be cold.
Oh, okay.
To get started on your day, which, all for it. I've done it before. I'm not a huge fan myself. I know this is an external thing and we're talking about internal things, but one of the things I've been thinking about recently, which, I have an iPhone like most of the world, or at least most of this country. And one of the things that you can look up is how many times you pick up your phone throughout the day. And pretty much every time I do that, it reminds me that I don't want to actually know that information because I often so here's the other thing, I live my life where I try to turn off as many notifications as possible. So my phone doesn't have almost any notifications besides like texting and calls. And my watch only receives calls. So I already lower that quite a bit, but because I do, if I am looking for something or expecting something, sometimes I pick up my phone more often, right? Because I don't know if I've gotten anything yet. So I go back and forth on which is the better option here. But I guess my point is, what I ask myself is, why am I doing that? Why am I picking it up? And most of the time, the reason I'm picking up the phone is not because of the fact that I'm curious what's on the phone. It's more of some sort of an insecurity. I find that I do it more often when I'm by myself. And it's just a level of, maybe I can connect with somebody right now, right, instead of actually physically connecting with somebody or being proactive about that. I'm just picking up my phone to say, hopefully they like me.
Yeah, it's just that interruption of being with yourself. It's like, I want to have the quick dopamine hit of connecting with someone else so that I don't have to deal with whatever I don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Oh, well, that could be a whole nother podcast, what you just said, that last sentence, not dealing with whatever you don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about that?
Well, distractions are great, but I think the topic of conversation here has to do with the presence and focus, centeredness, mindfulness. What stops us from doing that? And what are the benefits? Why is it worth investing in?
Yeah, it's a good question. And why does it take drugs for us to do that sometimes? I mean, hypothetically, not illegal drugs, obviously, because I've never done any of that, but I've just heard stories.
Focus enhancing drugs like Adderall or Ritalin.
Yeah, they could be legal or illegal drugs for that reason. But what was your question? Your question was why? Why what?
Why is it hard? And we kind of just talked about that. And then why is it worth it? Because I feel like mindfulness and presence, focus, it's a muscle that your brain has to work, right? It's a muscle that you can exercise, you can get better at it. And it's annoying as fuck. I hate doing meditation and mindfulness. I get the benefits. It's great. I hate it and love it.
Yeah.
But the reason I stick with it and I keep trying to work on getting better at this is because I believe that there is serious benefits to me and the people I love to me being more present. And so I need to keep that objective in mind, the reward, if I'm going to trudge through working that part of my brain out.
Yeah.
I wrote down a definition of mindfulness by Daniel Siegel, who's the neuroscientist that wrote the book Mindsight.
Yeah.
He said, mindfulness is a form of mental activity that trains the mind to become aware of awareness itself and to pay attention to one's own intention. Attention to one's own intention. And I just kind of read that and I worked backwards and said, what happens if I don't get those things? What happens when I'm not aware of awareness itself and when I don't pay attention to my own intentions?
Okay.
And I have very little control over what I achieve during the day. I have very little rational connection to my actions and the results. So I'm less cognizant of how I impact and affect other people with my mood and behavior. And I also don't have a good correlation between my choices and activities and the results in my life that those are generating. So I feel that without that mindfulness component, you're just disconnected and you're just kind of flipping around like a dead fish.
Oh, yeah. I definitely relate to that for sure. I think often about what it was like when I was a child, when you were a child. Sure, it was more like this, but really back in the day before most of the modern media existed, right? When you actually had to go tell somebody something, or you had to send somebody on a horse to go do that.
Pigeon.
Or a carrier pigeon. Yeah, like Game of Thrones style or whatever, right? What were they called in Game of Thrones? I'm trying to remember now. They weren't called pigeons. They were something else. You know what I'm talking about?
It's been a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody will listen to this and they'll be like, how can you not think of this? But my point was, I think about what would that look like and how could I intentionally create some of that in my life right now? Because just because media exists doesn't mean I need to let it own me. I don't need to let my device own me. I don't need to stare at my phone every 3 seconds. And, I've been thinking about that more. Speaking of another concept, 4-hour work week, Timothy Ferriss. One of the things he talks about in that book, which I appreciated a lot, is just how to set boundaries and guidelines around when you're available. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and common examples from the book are like sending out an autoresponder on your email that says, I respond to emails at, X time, or on your voicemail that, hey, I do this once a week or whatever. And the point of why I'm bringing up that book and his concept is not that. It's more of, for me internally, I have to commit to myself to having time with whatever I'm doing to try to stay present and then remove all distractions. Otherwise, it doesn't work for me because I, like you, are ADHD and have a really difficult time concentrating anyway. So for me to be able to do something else, I have to, maybe it's a time block. Maybe it's just, okay, there's this amount of time. I have to remove the distractions and I have to commit to myself that, hey, I'm going to spend the next 17 minutes on this. And then I have to keep that commitment. Because as you know, if you keep a commitment to yourself and it's a lie and you don't keep it, you will eventually stop trusting yourself.
Yep. And when other people repeatedly see that habit play out, then they stop trusting you too.
How would you not? How do you trust somebody that says they're your friend and they keep saying that they're going to do something and they give you guidelines and time commitments and everything else, and then they just keep dropping the ball every single time? I mean, at a certain point, you kind of get fed up and you're like, okay. But what I think a lot of people don't think about, and I was actually just having this conversation with somebody over the weekend, is this particular person I've noticed does this a lot, where they make commitments for themselves, and we're in a relationship where we communicate pretty frequently, like once a week usually, and he'll make commitments to himself, have an idea of what he's going to do, and then not do it. I told him, I said, look, that doesn't affect me. I mean, it does, and it affects our relationship. And obviously, if he's not keeping his commitments, it makes it harder for us to discuss and do what we're doing. But who's the biggest person that hurts? What do you think?
It's going to be him.
Don't you think it's him? Yeah. Because if you just keep saying that you're going to do something and then you just keep not doing it, I think that's part of the reason why, from my experience being in business for a long time, a lot of people don't hit their goals. Because if you keep setting goals and then every single year you fail at hitting 80% of your goals, at a certain point, you're not even going to believe that you can do any of the goals, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a snowball effect on either end. Going back to Atomic Habits, that's a big concept in that book is the compounding effect of success or failure. And when I tell myself, I'm going to wake up early and go work out tomorrow morning, and then I don't, the next morning, I'm much less likely to do it that morning either, right? Because I've already shown myself that I wasn't willing to make that commitment, and I might have all the resolve the night before, but really the most beneficial thing to increase my likelihood of working out the next day is just working out the day that I said I would the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to make this an overly simplified concept right here, and maybe I am about to do that, but it all goes back to the why, right? Like, why am I making this commitment to myself? And is my why powerful enough to where this isn't just a goal? It's not an intention. It's not something I think it would be nice to do. It's something I'm actually going to do no matter what.
It's like Yoda said.
What did Yoda say?
Do or do not. There is no try.
There you go. I just wanted you to say it. And, again, as Simon Sinek said, start with why, right? Same concept. So why am I committing this to myself? And is my why strong enough to where I'm going to do this no matter what?
I think that's really, really important to keep in mind when you are on the failure snowball part of things. I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about is like, all right, you're 7 days into a failure streak, because failure streaks are just as real as success streaks.
Yeah, true.
You're 7 days into a failure streak of not eating your kids' Halloween candy, yet here you are. And you're now scraping the bottom of the barrel, the knockoff brand Skittles.
Oh, I don't relate to that. So.
And then I don't know. I think it's hard to redirect once you're on that spiral, if you will. But the why is just as powerful getting you out of the failure streak as it is keeping you on the upward trajectory. And just going back to, this is why I made this commitment originally. These reasons are just as much true and important to me now as they were when I first made this commitment. And the why helps derail you from the failure streak and get back on track. At least for me, it does.
Yeah, it definitely does for me too. And I just think it's interesting that you're saying that because, as of the time of this recording, this is the year where I am launching a new business, a new brand. We're launching this podcast. We're getting kind of an idea of the vision and those sort of things. And I've had a lot of conversations with you about this where it's not really imposter syndrome because we haven't really had any success yet. But whatever that is for less success keeps popping up based on what you just said. Like, why I have to consistently remind myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And why do I feel so passionate about this? And why do I feel like my life is shifting in a way where I want to do these things? Because frankly, with no to limited success, not a lot of pieces down in the ground, it kind of feels like a failure, even though it hasn't had a chance to succeed yet. So it can't be a failure, but it still feels that way because I think sometimes we think of failure as, well, we tried something and then there's failure. Well, failure could just be, we haven't even had any success yet. So failure could be, we have success and then we fail, right? And then we try to have success again. Failure could also just be this consistent, like, well, we haven't even succeeded yet. And man, that gets tiring after a while. But I remember I spoke with somebody and they were telling me back in the day, there were these salesmen and women that would sell commercial jets. Okay. So they would work for Boeing or whoever, and their goal was to sell a commercial jet. And their time frame on sales was like 3 years out or something. So they could be working on the sale for 3 years with nothing until one day it drops and then they're really successful, they make a bunch of money, etc. But think about that for a second. You're in sales, I'm in sales. Could you imagine a 3-year timeline and how much you have to talk to yourself and tell yourself the why of why that's so important during those 3 years without giving up? That seems almost unbearable to me.
It's really easy to lose motivation before you have momentum.
Absolutely.
My dad has a really good story that he lived through on that always has stuck with me. He was a timber investment fundraiser. So he had to raise money to buy huge acreages of timberland. And the type of dollars you're talking about, you're not going to your local bank to get this money. It's large endowments and sovereign wealth funds and that kind of thing. So the people that are willing to invest. It's a very small pool. And he was brought on when they had very little funds available to that was his whole job, is to raise big chunks of money to be able to buy these investments.
Right.
And, he gets signed on and he starts working and he starts trying to build relationships and book meetings and get his foot in the door in different ways. And the other people at the company were like, just make a sale. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million, just make a sale. And you should just focus on smaller fish. And he just kept his motivation on that idea that in order for me to hit the goal that I need to make, the small change is a drop in the bucket. So I have to just stay completely focused on the people that actually will move the needle for our goals. And he went, I think, over, I don't know, I'll butcher it, but probably a year and a half before making his first fundraising close. And when they finally did make that close, then there was credibility instantly associated because it was a big firm that basically was willing to sign on the dotted line. And then it was much easier after that. But he had to go through the famine part and keep his motivation against everyone else's advice to just say, I'm focused on the goal. I see out there, I'm only going to work on things that move the needle for that. And I'm going to understand that my motivation just has to stay consistent without incremental progress or milestones being hit.
Yeah, that's incredible. There is another quote I wrote down here from Atomic Habits that James Clear said. He said, master the habit of showing up. And that's been a good one for me based on what you're just saying. He shows up with his why. He knows his purpose. He knows his goal. He knows his vision. He knows where he's going. And he's just going to show up and do whatever's there for him to do that day. And sometimes that is so hard for me because I get so distracted or I get discouraged or I get annoyed or there's something else going on. I'm like, fuck it. This goal isn't the right goal. And then I listen to somebody else's goal for me instead of my own goal for me. And then that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah. There's a million ways to get distracted and usually only one path to stay on your track of motivation and focus.
You brought up the book, The Gap and the Gain, the other day on one of the other podcasts.
And Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
Yeah. Also just started reading the book because you brought it up, actually. So I'm a little bit through it now. But one of the things that he was talking about just recently is how easily it is for all of us to try to accomplish other people's goals for us instead of our own. Somebody shoulding on us, right? Of like, well, you should do it this way, or it should be done this way, or some sort of thought where if we don't have a strong enough internal compass and a strong enough why ourselves, then we'll just pick and choose from other people. I relate to that because I do that a lot. If I don't have a real strong vision or why of why I'm doing something, then I'll listen to what other people say and I'll kind of, pick and choose from different things and then decide, okay, this is my goal now. When in reality, it wasn't really mine. I didn't do that deep internal reflective work. It was more, I'd rather just process this with other people and then take what I want from different places and then go from there. And sometimes that's good because it's, tribe of elders. I understand that concept. And sometimes it's not because I don't have a strong enough internal compass myself to measure it off of.
I can't tell you how many times I've been at some sort of mastermind group or get together networking thing that has to do with goal setting and just pick a goal out of the hat that I'm like, oh, that sounds good. I think I'd like to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I remember we were supposed to have goals all written out and one of them was a health goal. And I was just like, I'm going to row 2,500 meters every day. It was such an arbitrary goal. So weird. I just started rowing and liked it and was like, I'll do this. And I lasted 5 days on working on that goal because I didn't take the time to process it and understand why. I had no why behind it.
Yeah, I was just going to say why, besides it sounded cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I relate to that for sure. And as much as I'd love to say that I don't care about other people's opinions of myself, it's just not true. I mean, I don't care about yours really, but people that I love and care about.
Speaking of, what emotional barriers hinder you and your ability to stay present?
That's a great question. I would say most of it relates to me being self-centered. So let's define some terms here for a moment. I grew up like you in a very conservative religious environment where I think you'd relate to this. Tell me if you don't. There was a lot of focus on don't ever be selfish, right? Agreed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the more I've thought about this concept with other people that are either still in religious or not anymore in religious context, is there isn't anything wrong with being selfish, but I don't ever see a good time to be self-centered. At least that's how I define it. Now, that might not be how the dictionary defines it, but here's how I think of it. I think of self-centered means I'm an egomaniac narcissist where everything revolves around me. It's always me. The center is the self, right? At least that's how I think of it. Again, dictionary.com might disagree, but that's my thought. Being selfish sometimes is a good thing. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to make sure that maybe I hold my needs above you at some point. Maybe I hold my needs above my kids at some point. Maybe I hold my needs above my girlfriend at some point. And maybe the terms aren't appropriate for what I'm using, but that's how I think of it. So to go back to your question.
It confuses to the difference. So selfish, you're defining as basically self-prioritization.
Yes, or can be. Yeah.
And self-centeredness is what?
I'm just going to look up the dictionary now so that we can define terms. Here it says self-centered means preoccupied with oneself and one's affairs. The way I hear that is it's all about me. It's all about me, right?
Yeah.
That's self-centeredness. And I think the idea in the church or the religious context I grew up in was telling or trying to tell people don't be self-centered, but that's not how it came across. The way it came across to me is never put yourself above anything else, basically. Be the servant, be underneath, especially God, your spouse, your children, etc. Right? Fair?
Yeah.
From your experience as well? So I think what the church and the religious context was trying to say is don't be self-centered. Don't just be all about yourself at all times. Versus if I look up, I don't like looking up the terms this way.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
it doesn't work.
Your definition, I don't know if you'll get there, but I
don't think I will, and I don't know what other word to use.
Prioritization. In other words, you are prioritizing your needs, and that doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. There's no moral attribute to that. It's just, here's the things that I want to do and feel like I need to do for myself. And it's not necessarily a hyper focus like self-centeredness, which is a focus on yourself. It's the decisions you're making. That's kind of the line I think you're making.
It is. Yeah. So let's use self-prioritization. I like that word to answer your question. You asked me about the emotional barriers that hinder me from being fully present. And most of them, where I was trying to go with this, is they come from me being self-centered and selfish. Whatever word we want to use here. It comes from me only thinking of me. Because if I'm only thinking of me, I can't think of what is around me, and I can't be present to who I'm even with because I'm too focused on myself. So I think they all stem from that. All the emotional barriers that I stem from is if I can't look past how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what is occurring to me. If I'm not focused on that, and again, it doesn't mean that I can't be focused on self, at least what I need, but it's not entirely that.
I was thinking in opposite terms, in that one of the biggest barriers to me focusing when I'm the most frantically all over the place, it's because I am so afraid of being selfish that I basically don't give myself space for myself. So I don't give myself space to think, and I'm just going. Take kids as an example, right? You're just going from one event to the next, setting up, cooking, tearing down, cleaning up after them, all the things, and you're just fully focused on serving some other people in your life. You don't take the space for yourself, and I end up being this completely scattered mess after I operate in that mode for too long.
If anyone has heard of Richard Schwartz, who created Internal Family Systems, if you haven't heard of that, I would definitely recommend you look it up. One of the things he talks about is what it's like if you're being in your true self. And he has these 8 C's. I'll just read them off to you: compassion, curiosity, courage, clarity, creativity, connected, confidence, and calm. And he says that if you are those 8 things, then you are living in your true self. You're not living another part of you that is not your true self. Make sense?
You have to do all 8 to be.
Well, you have to be in those. I don't know if there's a rule necessarily, but if you're not one of those things, like instead of being calm, if you're super anxious, then what he's saying is that's not your true self. That's another part of you that is trying to deal with something, probably in a negative way.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is that I once heard somebody, and I can't quote this because I don't know who said it, but he said that presence equals being calm and connected, which are 2 of the 8 C's that I just read. He said presence equals being calm and connected. And I think a lot about what you're saying and what I'm saying right now to when I have been present in my life. And I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't been those 2 things. Like, even if there's a lion in front of me about ready to rip my face off, I still have to be very connected, obviously, to know what's happening right there. I still have to be calm in a way. My heart could be racing, but I have to be calm enough to where there's not so much blood in my head that I literally can't think, right? I still have to be able to think and react to things. So that's what I think of as calm. I don't just think of laying down on a yoga mat with my hands spread out and doing some sort of, om, right? I don't think it necessarily has to be that. But for me, when I get anxious or I get, again, really focused on self-centeredness, then I'm not connected to those around me. Then I'm not calm within myself. And that's when I have the hardest time being present. Now, we talk a little bit about what that means as being a dad. No, we haven't brought that up yet. But holy shit, man. When you have a fucking 11-year-old, 9-year-old, and 6-year-old trying to be calm and connected when there's 8 million things going on from all 3 people all at the same time is really difficult. So it's definitely something that I just try to purposefully think of as we're in the middle of chaos. How can I have an inner sense of calm? This goes back to mindfulness and meditation. How can I have an inner sense of calm? And then how can I feel really connected to actually what's happening right here? Not just focus solely on me and what's happening to me, but how I'm actually connected in this room right now. Does that make sense? The difference?
Yeah. And if you practice ahead of time, then it makes the likelihood of success much better.
What do you mean practice it ahead of time?
You mentioned it in the context of your kids running around all over the place, right? And the chaos, right? So if you practice, what does it feel like to be connected and calm? All the other C's. When you practice all of that ahead of time, when it's not chaos, then you have a higher likelihood of success. And that's why, every counselor is going to have you practice certain techniques at home, skills, if you will, to finding your centeredness, to finding your calm, to lowering your blood pressure, so to speak. Because if you can't do it on a normal Tuesday, then when everything is going to shit, there's no way in hell you're going to do it then.
Agreed. So something you just said kicked in a thought that I had. I don't remember where I heard this analogy. It might have been Tony Robbins. He might have talked about this, but there was a test that was done on basketball free throw shooting. I think I may have actually just found it as we're having this conversation. Effects of Imagery Use in Basketball Free Throw Shooting by Jamal Edward Cannon. I'm not sure if this is the original one or not, but the one that I heard about, what it was is they gave them a certain period of time to practice and then a certain period of time to actually make their free throws. Okay. So let's say it was an hour and a half, and let's say they had an hour to practice and then 30 minutes to actually make their free throws. That was one group of people. The other group of people, they said, instead of practicing and then making the free throws, just spend the entire hour and a half visualizing you making free throws. So spend an hour doing that.
Physical practice, just in your head.
Correct. And then 30 minutes of the same test. Okay. So they both had the same test at the end. The difference was one was actually practicing with a ball and one was just practicing in their head. Okay. Make sense?
Huh?
Any idea what the results were?
Well, I'm just going to guess that it was practicing in your head, because that sounds fucking nuts.
What do you mean?
You wouldn't be telling the story if it wasn't some batshit crazy thing about like, don't actually practice, but just imagine yourself practicing and it's just as good.
Yeah. So what they found, the bottom line is that the people that just did it in their head had substantially better results than the people that actually practiced. That's the bottom line of the test. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I know that there's a lot of power in visualization and there's a bunch of books about it and et cetera. And it all sounds woo woo, et cetera. But it's been proven multiple times over and over and over and over again. So to your point, what I know I could get better at is visualizing something going better before it even occurs. Like with my kids, let's just use an example. So I took my kids to kind of an interactive art museum. We actually talked about it the other day. Hopscotch.
Hopscotch?
Yeah, in Portland. You're welcome, Hopscotch, for the free ad revenue. And it was really cool. I liked it a lot. It was a great event, but I knew it was going to be one of those situations where you're going from room to room. All three of my children are different speeds, different interests, different excitement, etc. And they're not supposed to be by themselves. We're supposed to be with them the whole time. So I just already knew with 14 different rooms and them all wanting to go somewhere different, it was going to be a little complicated. I also brought my girlfriend and her son, which made it more complicated. So, because why not? And as we're having this conversation right now, it actually did go well. I did enjoy it, etc. But what I realize having this conversation right now that would have helped it is me visualizing us going to the museum, walking through all the different rooms and having a great time. The reverse happened afterwards. So afterwards, we were all pretty tired and hungry, and we're in Portland, and I have my issues with Portland and drivers and people and all that sort of stuff, which you already know about. We don't need to talk about that on the podcast. Portland's a great place. Come visit. So anyway, after Hopscotch, we went to try to find a restaurant, and it was like a 2-hour wait. So then we went to try to find another one. You know, that experience in any big city, right? So we went to this other one and finally found a place that we thought was going to work. Girlfriend couldn't find a place to park her car. I had already parked. We're sitting at this big long table trying to get a menu. My kids are freaking out, starving, etc. And then, people were being very Portland. They're like, oh, there's already a huge party sitting here. I'm like, I don't fucking see him, you motherfucker. And then I just was mad, right? I was just pissed off. I was being a cranky old man. My kids were like, what the hell? And it just wasn't working. And there's a great example of visualizing the opposite, because what I realized after that happened is that I had in my head that it was going to be difficult. I just already did, because I knew that I was in Portland. I knew that it was a busy night. I knew that people were going to be busy, etc. So instead of visualizing like, this is going to be a nice, calm experience where we're going to go find a restaurant, we're going to get some food, it's going to be fun, doesn't have to be a big deal, etc. It just turned into this fucking nightmare to where we just ended up leaving, and I like stormed out the door and then had to apologize to my kids later. And then guess what? Found a pizza place that was wide open with no one there. My kids only wanted pizza anyway. The parking was easy. It took 2 seconds to get the pizza. And that literally would have been my experience from moment one if I would have just visualized and calmed myself and went through with it.
How do you think that first experience would have changed if you had visualized saying, I acknowledge that this will probably be hard, but I'm going to visualize a version of success in my mind? Do you think it would have been different, and how?
I do. So the first restaurant that we went to with the 2-hour wait, first of all, I wouldn't have gotten upset about it, because if I would have already visualized, like, hey, we're in Portland. There's a good chance there's going to be a wait. And if there is, no big deal. We'll just go somewhere else. But instead we walked there. They had a 2-hour wait. So then we had to walk back, and then I was going to be cranky about it. For the second place, then I just wanted to find something. But if I would have visualized the fact of, hey, we're just going to go there, we're going to see what it's like, we're going to see if it's not too busy, we're going to see if they have seats, then I think I would have been really low key about it, knowing I'm just trying to find a casual place where me and my kids can sit down and eat some food real quick, and then we're going to head home. And frankly, what ended up happening is we went to that pizza place. I got pizza to go and had them eat in the car on the drive home. So we got home sooner, which was great. It was easy, man, because we needed to do bath still. School was the next day, and we're already half an hour away from the house. So I'm like, I don't want to sit here. So we did that, and it worked really well. So if I would have just visualized, like, what do I want for the rest of the night? What do we need to do? Am I trying to accomplish too many things in too short a period of time? Which I was, because I was trying to like go to dinner, find a parking spot, find a restaurant, wait in line, get the food, have it be somebody that everybody likes, and do all this within like half an hour.
It's an impossible scenario.
It's an impossible scenario. So if I would have just realized, what do I actually want? Well, what I actually want is I actually want to get back to my house pretty soon so that we can do baths and do bedtime and just get everyone calm so that they're all ready for school the next day. Then I would have known, oh, I should probably go someplace where we could just take out some food, we can drive home, and then it would have resolved all those problems. It would have resolved the long walk to the restaurant that had the long wait. It would have resolved the difficulty in parking and trying to find a spot. It would have resolved even sitting down at this other place. Because at the end of the day, what I really wanted is just some quick food so that we could get home and start bedtime. But I tried to do it all. I wanted a really good restaurant and I wanted really amazing food and I wanted all these other things that really weren't possible in the time and parameters we had.
Right. Conflicting objectives that conflict with each other and the reality you're presented with.
Yeah, correct. Whereas, when they're asking these basketball players to visualize free throws, they're not saying, hey, visualize a bunch of people on the court and then visualize you doing free throws and then visualize somebody in your face and then visualize doing a 3-pointer and then, you know what I mean? They're just visualizing one thing. You're standing on the free throw line, visualize how you move your hand, the fact that the ball goes up, the fact that the ball goes in the net, and it worked, which is incredible to me.
Because of the simplicity.
Yeah.
It's very hard to combine focus with complexity.
Oh, yeah. Good call.
One of the interesting things about any of these mental acrobatics that we're talking about, any of these kind of the mental games that we have to essentially conquer or win or get some semblance of success on in order to get success in other parts of our lives. Focus being one, presence being one, patience, all the C's you talked about, those are all like specific games that we have to learn to play and skills we have to build. I think the key to a lot of them, when you start really derailing, is that recognizing when you are derailing, recognizing when you are losing focus, recognizing when you are starting to be disembodied or disconnected, your heart rate's elevating. What are ways that you have found the early indicators, the signs, behaviors that you are not fully present, you're not in a state of calm, cool, collected dad?
One that comes to mind first is there's a part of me, it doesn't have to be all of me, but there's a part of me that doesn't want to be here, wherever here is.
What else?
And there's one that's even simpler than that. And that is for me to start thinking about something that's not where I am or what I'm doing.
That's
right?
pretty
like,
simple.
I mean, this is a very simple example. Right in the middle of you talking a second ago, I got distracted by my phone and looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good example of me not being connected, me not being calm, me not being present. Right. And did I need to look at it right that second? No. Have I been good besides that during this entire recording? Yes. But I still did that. So that's another thing is just if you or our listeners know anything about addiction, one of the primary things that addiction is just an escape. It's an escape from reality. It's an escape from whatever is currently happening to you. That's why people get addicted to things, because they don't want to be present. What addiction have you ever heard of where somebody wants to be fully present and alive with the moment they're experiencing? That's not why addictions happen. They happen because you want to escape. So the reason I bring that up, how do I know if I'm getting to a point where I'm not going to be present, is if I want to escape at all. I don't want to be here. I want to, there's just at least even a part of me, even if I'm watching all three of my children and we're all playing a game together, let's say, and we're sitting around the table and we're having a great time and we're laughing and it's awesome and enjoyable and everybody's fed and nobody's whining about anything. Like, even if it's that perfect moment, and then my phone is sitting next to me on the table and it's face down because I'm trying to stay present, and I grab it and I look at it. The moment I do that, the moment I realize, why are you trying to escape right now? Just enjoy the beautiful moment.
It's finally peaceful. Why would you want to escape this?
Right. Because then it gets boring. I have a hard time when things aren't extreme one way or the other. So if it's quote boring or just low key, then I want to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But why do I need to watch an Instagram video that cunt of a friend Tyler sent me when I'm in the middle of hanging out with my kids?
You know, it's going to be comedy gold. I have noticed even an iteration of that is that I will take a perfect moment like that and I'll get distracted trying to make it better. So I'll be playing a game and I'll be like, wouldn't everyone like to have some adventure music? Let's put a soundtrack to this moment. And then all of a sudden I'm on my phone searching Spotify for the perfect playlist. Or
when everyone else is already connected and there and good.
Right. So that's just another way of justifying that desire to escape the moment.
Yeah, for sure it is. And going back to that whole idea of being connected as part of the 8 C's, we live in a world that makes it harder and harder to be connected because of the fact that we're so connected, right? Doesn't that seem ironic? Even right now, we're both on computers, maybe. I don't know what you're on, but I'm on a computer. You're on a computer, a tablet or something. And we have microphones and we see each other's video and we're recording audio. And we still have all of our other electronic devices all over our houses. And I have 3 monitors in front of me right now, right? There's so many different ways I'm not fully even connected with just you right now.
Right. Yeah.
Even right now, when we're having a connected talk about being connected and being present, I'm still not present with you. First of all, we're not even in the same room. So let's just start with that. Second of all, we're not even in the same state. Okay. And we can't interact that way. And you also can't see all the stuff that I'm doing off of the screen, just like I can't see the stuff with you with when we're getting distracted. Hopefully not. Hopefully that's not what you're doing. That was earlier today, hopefully. And we'll just let the audience guess what we're talking about right there. But there are even so many different things on just trying to be present and connected in this moment where we're not present and connected, when I'm trying my best to be as present and connected as possible. So that's why I was going back to the whole concept of like being in the 1700s when there's no media, there's no screen. You have to actually just talk to people. Seems like such a weird concept to me.
Yeah. The irony is that when you were talking about how you had been good about not looking at your phone, someone was calling me and it was like my phone is silent, but my watch started buzzing. So I literally have this tactile sensor feedback on my watch that is giving me a physical reminder some stimulation is happening while you're telling me how hard it is to be focused.
And I got to tell you this too, because it's just too funny. As you were telling me that story, the reason I put my watch up to the video camera is that the same thing happened. My phone is not on or anything else, but my watch started vibrating because my dad was calling me literally in the middle of the sentence about when it just happened to you.
Yeah. So
we can't even go 3 minutes on this podcast without having something that's going to disconnect us from each other by something else trying to connect with us.
And you can always be more intentional to stop that from happening, right? So we could take our watches off. We can put our phones away more. It's not like we're just helpless in the sea of technology, right? We can take ownership and control. I need to be better at that. I think all the time about my kids and how much more distracted they are growing up than I was, how much more technological intervention there is into their daily awareness. There's like, apparently on iPads now, you can play games and watch YouTube videos at the same time, like picture in picture. And their friends will come over and they will have a whole bunch of things going on one tablet. And I'll put the foot down with my kids. I'm like, you just do one thing at a time. Just enjoy one thing at a time. And then I'll go downstairs to the movie room and sit down with them to watch a show they want to watch. And I'm on my phone while watching the
I was just gonna say the exact same thing, because I fought my son with this. Like we used to do, well, I mean, we still do Friday movie night most Fridays, and for as long as I can remember, for a long time, my son either wants his iPad or his computer in front of him while we're watching a movie. So he's on multiple screens at the same time, right? And I went through a phase where I was really hardcore with him. I'm like, dude, no, we're watching a movie. That's all we're doing right now. Put your stuff away. As I pull out my phone and I'm literally scrolling through Instagram or whatever, why is not just a movie good enough? I mean, do you remember when we were kids? That was the only fucking option. And we couldn't even record it. So it was either we watched it when it was on or we didn't watch it.
Yeah, it's a different world. And I think it's very foolish of us to say, oh, our kids have the distractibility issues and we're fine.
Right.
It takes intentionality and discipline to make choices to limit the amount of distractions in your life and sacrifice.
Definitely does.
And when it comes down to it, most of the time, I'm not willing to make even the smallest amount of sacrifice and inconvenience to de-distract my life.
Yeah, I agree. When I used to start traveling internationally when I was pretty young, like low 20s, it was long enough ago that cell phone plans didn't just work. everywhere in the world. You would either have to get a specific cell phone plan or a different carrier, etc. And I still think of those days with a lot of fondness because I would leave, I'd be out of the country for a week and I didn't have a phone. And it was amazing because people couldn't get a hold of me. I could check in if I needed to. It was still back in the day of internet cafes, etc.
I was going to say internet cafes.
Yeah. So I could go find a phone somewhere. I could go find internet cafe somewhere to send an email. But man, it was so nice. And I got reminded of that again this last summer. Part of the trip that I took with my kids, we stayed at an Airbnb near Mount Rainier, and there was no cell or internet there. And it wasn't for very far. You only had to go like a mile away, and it was fine. But there was nothing there. They didn't have a landline or anything else. So literally when we were in the house, we were forced to just nothing. They couldn't even jump on their tablet and do anything, etc. If we wanted to watch something, we would put in a VHS or a DVD from the Airbnb and just watch
like
it.
The old times.
Man, it was awesome though. I'm still trying to think of different ways that I can do that. And I think just practically, because I'm sure we'll probably start getting to some practicalness of this podcast here soon. These are obviously pretty simple things. Number one, just moving my cell phone to another room and not having any notifications on my watch. But also for me, like I was talking about before, it's making the commitment for whatever we're doing to just be present during that time. So maybe it's that, hey, I want to watch a movie with my kids and it's an hour and a half and I'm not going to be on any other devices. And maybe we can pause and chat about stuff, etc. If it's like a learning movie, or maybe we can just enjoy it and eat some popcorn, whatever it is, just during that time frame. And I think if I found for myself, if I commit to that for certain time frames, it makes it easier for me to quote unquote reward myself afterwards. Hey, if you do this, then you can look at yourself or whatever it is, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a quote reward, because then I trick my brain into thinking that that's the reward versus like watching the movie with my children. So that's not what I mean by that. But it's more of, hey, if you do this, then you do this, right? Here's a consequence, positive, negative. So I don't know. That's been something that I think has been helpful for me.
Does that backfire though? I mean, our friend Jonah, he named his phone Dopamine Delivery Device. That's what his iPhone official name is. And so if you are setting up your reward system to be like, you can get your dopamine delivery as soon as you do this thing.
Yeah, let's say it's not a reward. Maybe here's a better example, because I agree with you. And I tried to, back out of my own statement at the end there, but maybe you didn't hear that part. I'm not trying to do it as a reward as much as I'm trying to do it as a consequence. So here's maybe a better example. I decide that I want to do this with my kids for the next hour and a half, but I'm waiting on a phone call sometime in the next several hours. I decide, okay, I'm going to do this for the next hour and a half, but I'm putting my phone away. Then I will check my phone in an hour and a half to see if that I need to connect with this person or maybe make a phone call, etc. Maybe that's a better example.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they have the focus time on the iPhone now, right? Like you can block off the do not disturb in different types of settings.
For some reason, do not disturb never worked for me though. Every time I turn it on, phone calls still come through, texts still go through, and the settings are correct. I know I sound like an old man right now, but I promise.
And it's not user error. God damn it.
I've gone through all of the shit online to figure out how to do this. I'm doing it right, and they still come through. I don't know what it is about my phone. I swear to God. Important. I guess so. No, it's stupid though, because it always ends up being somebody I don't want to talk to.
So going back to the question of early indicators that you're getting distracted or you're trying to escape, for me, it's in my body, dysregulation. If my kids come up and they start like tickling and touching and grabbing at me, and I just am like, oh, get off me. Like that initial response of being touched kind of dysregulates you or disorients you. That's a really good key indicator to me that I need to take a breath, take some space for myself, and get embodied and centered before I engage with my kids.
So you're saying if it annoys you or frustrates you or feels like it's dysregulating you, then that's the sign.
Yeah. It's not like I hate being touched by my kids all the time, right? It's just
that's a sign that something else is going on.
An indicator that I am in a place where I'm emotionally not regulated or physically not regulated. and I'm not present, I'm thinking about other stuff, I'm letting the stress get to me. So that's happened a lot recently where I've had to take inventory and then give myself permission to give myself space. Because I used to just be like, oh, shoot, I just got to get over this. But there's a process to getting back to a place of calm. And when you're that dysregulated, you can't will yourself to that spot with a couple deep breaths. I have to physically leave the room, take some time to myself, do some breath work. And it only takes 5 minutes, but then come back and then I'm fine. But those early indicators for me has been huge in getting to a place where I can be a little bit more present and focused. If you ask my kids, probably wouldn't say that there's been a lot of improvement, but I've noticed improvement.
And that's all that matters.
Yep.
So I was also thinking one word that pops up for me a lot is the word bored. So if I start feeling, quote, bored, and I know how that feels because it's like an escape for me, right? Where I have to be doing something different. And a lot of the times that starts with boredom. If I start feeling bored, then I know there's a good chance I'm not going to be very present in whatever I do next.
The interesting thing about boredom is that it's not just an ADHD thing or just it could be a million different things. It's not just about stimulation. It can have just as much to do with just trauma or what you said earlier about wanting to escape unconsciously. You don't even realize that's what it is. But boredom is a really good indicator that something else is going on that has to be addressed. And I didn't really think anything of boredom other than just I'm an easily bored person. But the more I dig into trying to stay present, the more I realize there's a lot more going on with boredom.
You know, a few years ago, I remember something that my therapist said to me at the time, which was really fascinating to me because I would mention times where I would get bored, etc. And he said, from his experience with a lot of his clients, a lot of the time they use the word bored, it should be interchanged with depressed. And when he first said that, I was like, but I'm not a depressive person in general. I don't really get depressed very often. You know, maybe it happens sometimes, etc. But I don't really see myself as a depressed person. And the more I thought about it and the more we unpacked it, the more I realized he's absolutely correct. Because again, it's another way of me like escaping. And the only reason I want to escape is because I don't like where I am, which is kind of the definition of being depressed. Like, I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. I'm quote unquote bored. And it's brought on some interesting realization too for my son, because he uses the word bored a lot. So then I started at times overanalyzing, but at times properly analyzing of when he said bored, is he really just depressed? And I think for him, the depression hasn't come up a whole lot, but what's come up more is that escapism, right? Of like, there's something in my body that doesn't feel comfortable. You mentioned that earlier, right? Feeling it in your body. There's something in my body that doesn't feel comfortable with where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing, etc. Therefore, I'm bored, or therefore, I just want to escape. Anything besides being present. And maybe I don't go to things like drugs, like an addiction, but maybe I go to another drug, like my phone, or maybe I go to another drug, like just getting more validation from other people, or just not being here by myself. You know, I was talking to somebody over the weekend too about feeling isolated and the difference between loneliness and isolation. And you can feel isolated with a million people around you, right? Or if you're by yourself, at least I have. I don't know, I'm sure you experienced that as well. So it doesn't really have anything to do with externally what's happening, because you can feel isolated by yourself. You can feel isolated with, again, a million people around you. So it really doesn't have anything to do with external. Then the question is, well, what internally makes you feel isolated, right? Why do I feel disconnected? And to me, that's just disconnected. And it just means I'm not present.
Yeah.
If I feel disconnected, I'm not present. I feel isolated. I feel lonely, right? All of those things come.
Yeah. Sometimes the isolation comes from a lack of trust in other people too, not feeling safe.
Yeah, that's true. Are there any other things that you could think of back to your original question as far as, you know, call them trigger points for when you recognize that things maybe need to change?
Well, I think other people around you can be a very good indicator, right? So whether it's nonverbal, where people seem to be withdrawn from you, then sometimes that means you are putting off an energy and you're withdrawing as well. And people are mirrors, right? So they are reciprocating what you are doing. And so taking notice of other people's nonverbals is really helpful. And then sometimes just the actual feedback that people give you. Like I have one of the blessings of having one of my daughters is very articulate with her feelings and how I make her feel. Mm-hmm. So I hear all the time, Dad, I don't feel listened to. Dad, I don't feel like you're paying attention. Stuff like that. At first, I didn't feel like I could help, but get defensive. It just was so natural to and argue, right? So of course I'm listening to you. What do you think I'm doing here? I'm listening to you.
Right. Here's why you're wrong, that I am listening to you.
Especially because part of it is verbiage, right? So she'll say, you're not listening to me. And I'll have to reframe it and say, I'm trying to listen to you, but I'm just confused by what you're saying or what you are doing. So if you want to keep trying to communicate, I'm going to try my best to understand, and maybe we can minimize this confusion.
Right.
But other than that, it's usually pretty true. If your kid feels like you're not listening to them, there's something you're doing that's probably indicating that you're not listening to them. There's some level of distraction or lack of focus.
Agreed. On that note, and since we're talking about kids, this happened a few weeks ago where I was in the kitchen. I don't know. I think I was cooking dinner, bringing something out, etc. My 6-year-old daughter, who lives a very, I don't want to say carefree life, but in general, she's just kind of like la-di-da. She's just that type of person. Everything is just fine and things will work out, etc. until she gets really nervous about something. And then that's a whole different story. But usually she's just fine. She's just kind of sometimes unaware of what's happening around her, to be honest. She's just kind of in her own little world. That's just who she is. And she's also sick, so I get that. But I was grabbing something from the refrigerator, etc., and I didn't notice saying anything. I don't remember sighing. I don't remember doing anything. And then just out of the blue, she was like, Daddy, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. Why? She's like, oh, it just seems like you're really upset. I was like, oh. And I didn't even realize that I was doing anything. And it took that for me to realize I am upset. Why am I upset? What's happening right now?
Wow.
Because there wasn't anything that necessarily happened, but it was just the vibe I was putting off.
Yeah. That's also a tough one not to defend if you haven't recognized it in yourself. And they will say, what's wrong, Dad? And you're like, nothing's wrong.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
I really try to limit the snap responses or the quick responses and give myself a pause, because half the time when they say something that catches me off guard, there's something there, whether it's intuitive, emotional, empathetic or something, or just outright they're acknowledging something that I'm not willing to acknowledge. Just taking a pause and not dismissing it is pretty darn important.
For sure. Especially when you're listening to somebody wise. I mean, that's what I do every time you speak.
Yeah, well, it took you a while to get there, but at least we're here now.
Yeah. What's important for all the podcast listeners to listen to is that what I say, it's neither here nor there. It's just going to flow. But what Tyler says is eternal.
Eternal. Wow. Godlike status. I'll be sending out the link to my cult next Monday. All right. Key takeaways. Just going back to our conversation. I think it starts with intention of understanding what you want success to look like, visualizing it, as Josh so astutely pointed out, the power of visualization, not necessarily for this idea of a literal visualization of the outcome, but just being able to visualize your definition of success gets you halfway there. And then understanding that you can't have complexity and competing objectives and stay focused at the same time.
Yeah. And along with that too, even though this is what we were just talking about, is just recognizing the triggers, right? Recognizing the triggers that you have specifically, whoever's listening to this, because I have different triggers, Tyler has different triggers, you have different triggers. Recognizing the triggers that you have specifically, that point you to, hey, being present right now is going to be difficult for me. Is it something in your body? Like I know for myself too, where I feel stress, is in different locations based on like the type of stress and what I'm about to endure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way I can kind of check and be like, oh God, it's in my shoulders right now. Oh, it's in my neck. It's the back of my head. It's my lower back. And I kind of have an idea usually of what that means. So I think that can be very specific. So just understanding what your body triggers are, what you might feel, like I was talking about earlier, feeling bored is one of them for me. I feel a lot of stress in really high stress situations in my upper shoulders and neck. So if that starts hurting or I start getting a headache, I know that that's happening. So yeah, I think that's a big one, is just paying attention to those triggers. And then knowing part two would be, what do you do with it? As you mentioned earlier, do you go for a walk? Do you need to just go step outside for a moment? Just need time to meditate, pray, whatever it is.
Yeah. And there's some kind of pre-work you can do ahead of time, like we talked about. And then there's work or skills you can do in the moment that help derail your current dysregulated state and get you back to a place of centeredness.
Yeah. And to your point, that pre-work, going back to the visualization, that's something that I think I'm going to try even more this next week as I'm thinking about it, is whatever situation I'm going into, just visualize kind of like the free throws. How is this actually going to go down? And is this going to be successful? And what's my definition of success? And are those things in my control, right? So the free throw example, it is in your control to make a free throw because you just have to be good at making free throws. But if it's trying to make a free throw outside in a tsunami, you can't control the tsunami. So are you going to make a free throw? So I think that's the other piece of visualization for me, is not necessarily, hey, we're going to this museum and we're all going to run around. It's going to be perfect the whole time and no one's going to get upset, because that's an unrealistic visualization. But if I can visualize, well, here's about how long we're going to go. Here's what we're going to do. Here's, what's going to happen. And then if somebody's attitude changes, this is what we're going to do. That to me puts me in a better spot. So yes, I love that pre-work of visualization. I think that's critical.
Yeah, not just the ideal, but kind of looking at most likely version of reality it's going to be. And it may not end up that way at all, but at least you kind of have reset expectations. Because a lot of times with me, I have unrealistic expectations and I don't even realize it till after I'm in the shit, right?
For sure. Yeah, this goes back to
That was the problem. I had stupid expectations. If I had processed them ahead of time, I would have recognized that they were stupid expectations.
Yeah. So going back to my dinner example, right? Mm-hmm. After the museum, if I would have realized, which I didn't, but if I would have realized beforehand, we need something quick so that we can get back on the road, so that we can get home to deal with bedtime stuff, I wouldn't have even gone to the first two places we went to, because there was an odds that they were not going to be quick. So I would have looked up something else on my phone that would have been quick, and we probably would have ended up in a place like that pizza place anyway. So if I would have just realized what my expectations were, realized what I kind of wanted to accomplish, it would have just been totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. We did mention several things today too, which I'll mention again. We mentioned Atomic Habits, great book by James Clear. Check it out. 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. I talked about Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz. There's actually several good books about that. One is by Jenna, I can't remember her last name, McCursma or something like that. There's also some good podcasts on those as well. Were there any other books that we mentioned? Or
yeah, we mentioned The Gap in the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, and Mindsight by Daniel J. Siegel, a neuroscientist. So perfect. Those are all fantastic books that are absolutely worth a read, except for all the family systems. I don't know about those.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not giving specific recommendations here. I would just start looking it up. Some good stuff. There's actually, I think one of the podcasts that I have on there is actually it's a Timothy Ferriss one. If you look up a Timothy Ferriss, Richard Schwartz podcast, that's a good starter.
And we'll put that link in the show notes.
Sounds good.
Well, as always, we can't do this podcast without our faithful and dedicated listener base. So thank you guys for listening and supporting the podcast. And if you haven't already, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast really helps us out. So I appreciate you taking the 2 seconds it takes to give us some love on wherever you're listening to your podcasts.
And frankly, that's how we bring in the just millions and millions of dollars in cash every week. So we couldn't do that without you. Thanks, guys.
And this episode is sponsored by Dr. Cranky's Hemorrhoid Cream. So thank you to Dr. Hanky for sponsoring our podcast to bring in those bucks.
It's also sponsored by Narcissistics Anonymous that lie to themselves and say that this podcast makes millions of dollars a week. So thank you for NA. I kind of want to end like I did the other day, where I'm just right in the middle of making a really disgustingly gross, offensive comment to you, like calling you the biggest, I don't know if I want to say that word and then just ending it right in the middle of it. Like if I were just to say that you're a huge